The champagne glass nearly slipped from my fingers when I saw it. A midnight black Bugatti Chiron wrapped in an oversized red bow, parked center stage at Troy's company gala. $500,000 of carbon fiber and leather, gleaming under spotlights, while 300 of Charleston's elite applauded. My husband stood beside it, one arm draped around a woman in a scarlet dress who wasn't me. Candace has been instrumental to our success this year, Troy announced into the microphone, his voice carrying across the ballroom. This is just a small token of appreciation for everything she's done. The crowd erupted. I watched her squeal, throw her arms around his neck, and press her glossed lips to his cheek. Cameras flashed. Someone's phone was already live streaming. And I stood there, 30 feet away by the dessert table, wearing the dress Troy had called too much 3 hours earlier. Before we go any further, if you're enjoying this story of calculated revenge, smash that like button and subscribe to Formidable Revenge channel. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Troy's eyes found mine across the room. For 1 second, maybe less, I saw panic flicker across his face. Then his smile widened, and he raised his glass in my direction like this was perfectly normal. Like giving another woman a $500,000 vehicle at a public event while your wife watched was just another Tuesday. I raised my glass back, smiled. Let him think I was too stupid or too weak to understand what I was really seeing. The woman beside me, Troy's boss's wife, leaned in with conspiratorial glee. Isn't it generous? Troy really knows how to reward his team. He certainly does, I said, my voice steady as concrete. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Candace wasn't just Troy's associate. She'd been in our bed, wearing my jewelry, using credit cards linked to accounts with my name on them, and that Bugatti, purchased with funds from our joint savings. The same savings account I'd been building for 12 years while working 60-hour weeks at the hospital. Troy had gotten sloppy 3 months ago. A restaurant receipt left in his jacket pocket. Dinner for 2 at Le Bernardin, the night he told me he was visiting his mother in Atlanta. Then came the credit card statements, the late-night conference calls, the suddenly password-protected phone. But tonight's display wasn't sloppiness. This was arrogance. This was a man so confident in his control that he'd flaunt his mistress and her gift in front of everyone we knew, certain I'd smile and swallow it. He was right about the smiling part, as Candace posed for photos beside her new car, running her manicured nails along the hood. I pulled out my phone. Not to document the humiliation. I'd save the social media screenshots for later. No, I was texting Rachel, my attorney, with 3 words that would start the unraveling. It's time. Go. Troy thought tonight was his victory lap. He had no idea he'd just stepped into a trap I'd spent 3 months building, one careful piece at a time. The real show was about to begin. The discovery started small, the way poison always does, barely noticeable until it's already in your bloodstream. 4 months earlier, I'd been folding laundry when a charge notification lit up my phone. Premium lounge access at JFK Airport charged to our Amex. Troy was supposedly in Boston for a medical conference. I called the airline. His flight that day? Destination Turks and Caicos. I could have confronted him then. Part of me, the part still clinging to 12 years of marriage, wanted to. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he'd been looking at me lately, like I was an obligation instead of a person. Maybe it was intuition. So I stayed quiet and started watching. The patterns emerged quickly once I knew what to look for. Wednesday. Late meetings that lasted until midnight. Weekend golf trips with colleagues whose wives casually mentioned they hadn't seen their husbands either. His suddenly meticulous grooming, expensive cologne I'd never bought him, a new gym membership, despite hating exercise his entire adult life. Then came the bank statements. Troy handled our finances. Always had. You work enough hours, he'd say whenever I offered to help manage our accounts. Let me take care of the boring stuff. I'd trusted him. Stupid, considering I managed life and death decisions in the ICU every day, but handed our financial future to him without question. One Sunday while he showered, I logged into our savings account. The balance made my stomach drop. We should have had $460,000. My inheritance from my grandmother. His bonuses. Years of careful saving for the pediatric clinic I'd been planning to open. A dream I'd shared with him on our third date, back when he still listened when I spoke. The account showed $82,000. My hands shook as I scrolled through transactions. Luxury hotels, designer boutiques. A jewelry store charge for $18,000, dated 2 weeks after our anniversary, which Troy had forgotten this year. Restaurants with $100 steaks. Wine that cost more than our mortgage payment. None of it spent on me. The shower shut off. I closed the browser and sat on our bed, my mind moving through calculations like triage protocol. This wasn't just an affair. This was systematic theft. Our money, my inheritance, my future, the clinic that would serve underserved children in Charleston's poorest neighborhoods. All of it funding Troy's midlife crisis fantasy. That night at dinner, he complained about his steak being overcooked. I smiled and offered to make him something else, studying his face for any sign of guilt or remorse. Nothing, just entitlement. Long day? I asked, cutting into my own meal. Exhausting. He scrolled through his phone while talking. This merger is killing me. Might need to do another site visit to Miami next week. There was no merger. I'd already checked with his company's public filings. That's tough, I said. Want me to come with you? I could use a break? His eyes snapped up, briefly panicked. No, it'll be wall-to-wall meetings. You'd be bored. That smile again, the one that used to make me feel cherished. Now, it just looked practiced. Besides, the hospital needs you more than I do. The irony wasn't lost on me. He was right. The hospital did need me. I was the senior charge nurse in the ICU, responsible for 32 beds and the critical decisions that kept hearts beating. People trusted me with their lives, and I'd trusted Troy with mine. I'd spent 12 years building a life with this man. I'd supported him through medical school, worked double shifts to cover our expenses while he studied, postponed my own dreams so he could chase his. When he'd wanted to start his pharmaceutical consulting firm, I'd liquidated my emergency fund to help capitalize it. Now, he was using everything we'd built to impress a woman who probably didn't know his mother's first name. That night, after Troy fell asleep, I sat in our home office and opened a new folder on my laptop. I titled it, Evidence. If Troy wanted to play games with our money, our marriage, our future, fine. But he'd forgotten something crucial about me. I spent every day keeping people alive under impossible circumstances. I knew how to stay calm in crisis. I knew how to plan, and I knew exactly how to find a vein when I needed to draw blood. The real punch came 2 weeks after I'd discovered the depleted accounts. I was leaving my shift at Charleston Regional, a brutal 14-hour stretch with 2 codes and a ventilator emergency, when Troy called. His voice carried that forced casual tone I'd learned to recognize as deception. Hey babe, don't wait up. Client dinner ran late and I'm grabbing drinks with the team after. Background noise filtered through, soft music, clinking glasses, feminine laughter. Sure, I said, unlocking my car. Which client? Brief pause. The Patterson account, super boring contract stuff. I'd already pulled up his calendar on our shared Google account. No Patterson meeting scheduled. In fact, he'd blocked off the evening as personal time. Sounds important, I said. Text me when you're heading home. Will do. Love you. The line went dead before I could respond. I sat in my car, exhaustion weighing on every bone, and made a decision. I called Rachel Chen, not just my attorney, but my college roommate who'd seen me through every major life moment. If anyone would understand what I needed to do next, it was her. I need a private investigator, I told her without preamble. The best one you know. Troy? She asked, her voice tight. Troy. 48 hours later, I met with Nicole Torres in a coffee shop 3 neighborhoods away from anywhere Troy and I frequented. She was younger than I expected, maybe 30. with sharp eyes that cataloged everything. Your attorney filled me in on the basics, Nicole said, sliding a tablet across the table. But I need to know what you're really looking for. Divorce leverage, criminal charges, just information? I thought about the savings account. The lies, the years I'd given up. Everything, I said. I want to know where every dollar went, who she is, how long this has been going on, and I want documentation that will hold up in court. Nicole's smile was predatory. I can do that, but you need to be prepared for what I might find. Most people think they want the truth until they actually get it. I'm an ICU nurse, I told her. I've watched people die. I've held their hands while their organs failed. Whatever you find, I can handle it. She nodded. 2 weeks, maybe 3. Don't change your behavior at all. Act normal. Can you do that? Acting normal meant kissing Troy goodbye each morning, asking about his day, pretending I didn't notice when he angled his phone away from me. It meant lying beside him at night, feeling him scroll through messages in the dark, and not screaming. The first report from Nicole arrived 9 days later. Her name was Candace Whitmore, 28 years old. Marketing consultant at Troy's firm, though her actual qualifications were questionable. She'd been hired 6 months ago despite having minimal experience. She lived in a luxury apartment in downtown Charleston with a view of the harbor. Rent, $4,000 monthly. Troy was paying it. The photographs Nicole provided made my throat close. Troy and Candace at the Ordinary, sharing oysters at a table I recognized. The same table where he'd proposed to me 13 years ago. Troy and Candace boarding a private yacht. Troy and Candace entering her apartment building at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday, his hand on the small of her back. But the financial records were what gutted me. 18 months. The affair had been going on for 18 months. In that time, Troy had transferred $378,000 to various accounts and credit cards. Candace's rent, her car payment, a BMW X7, jewelry from Hamilton & Sons, trips to Napa, Aspen, St. Barthélemy. He'd even paid off her student loans, $62,000 of debt erased with money that was supposed to fund my clinic. I read through the report 3 times, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest. The final page contained Nicole's notes. Subject appears to be planning major purchase. Bank records show pre-approval for vehicle loan requesting $475,000, co-signed by Candace Whitmore. Dealership, Premier Auto Collection specializing in exotic vehicles. $500,000 for a car, for his mistress. I called Rachel immediately. How fast can you freeze our accounts? I asked. 12 hours if we file emergency motions claiming financial fraud and asset dissipation. But Layla, if you do this, there's no going back. He'll know you know. I looked at the photos spread across my kitchen table, my husband's hands on another woman, bought and paid for with my future. Good, I said. I want him to know. But Rachel suggested something better. Wait, she said, her voice taking on that calculating tone I remembered from law school study sessions. Let him buy the car. Let him give it to her. The more publicly he flaunts it, the better it looks for us in court. Asset dissipation, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, we can bury him with this. What if he drains everything else first? We'll freeze the accounts the day after. You'll have proof of the purchase, proof he prioritized his mistress over marital assets, and every judge in South Carolina will eviscerate him. The plan crystallized. Let Troy dig his own grave. Let him think he was getting away with it, then pull the earth down on top of him. 3 weeks later, Troy mentioned the gala. My company's annual event, he said, adjusting his tie in our bedroom mirror. Big night. You should come. I'd been planning to skip it, couldn't stomach watching him schmooze while pretending we had a real marriage. But something in his expression made me pause. Anticipation. Excitement. Sure, I said. I'd love to. His smile faltered for just a second. Great. Wear something nice. I wore the navy dress he'd always said washed me out. Let him think I'd be forgettable, easy to ignore while his real show played out. And when that Bugatti rolled onto the stage, wrapped in its ridiculous bow, Every flash of every camera was documenting the evidence I'd need. Troy had just handed me everything. The morning after the gala, Charleston's social media was on fire. I scrolled through Instagram over coffee while Troy snored in our bedroom, still recovering from his celebration the night before. Every post showed the same thing. Troy presenting Candace with the Bugatti. Her squealing delight, their embrace that lasted too long for any professional relationship. Troy Sullivan really knows how to appreciate his team. Goals, F. When your boss is this generous, boss life, living my best life. Candace herself had posted 17 stories. 17. Each one showed different angles of the car. Her manicured hands on the steering wheel, selfies with Troy photobombed in the background. Not one person had questioned it. Not one comment asked why a married man was giving his employee a $500,000 gift. The corporate world just accepted it. I screenshotted everything. Troy emerged around noon, rumpled but pleased with himself. "Coffee?" he asked, heading for the pot. "Already made," I said, not looking up from my phone. He poured a cup and sat across from me. "Last night was amazing. Did you see everyone's reaction to the car?" "Hard to miss." I finally met his eyes. "Pretty extravagant for an employee gift." "She earned it," he shrugged. "The Patterson contract alone brought in $3 million. Company's policy is to reward performance." Lie. I'd already verified that Troy's company had no such policy. Most employees got annual bonuses, 5 figures at best, not vehicles worth more than most people's houses. "Still," I pressed gently. 500,000? That's a lot. His jaw tightened. "We can afford it. The firm had a good year." Wrong again. The firm's financials showed modest growth, nothing extraordinary. But I didn't push. Let him believe I was questioning gently, not circling like a shark. My phone buzzed. Rachel? Texting under the guise of discussing a fictional book club. "Motion filed. Accounts freeze in 6 hours. You're clear for phase 2. Phase 2 meant documentation. While Troy showered, I photographed his laptop screen, open to his email, unencrypted. Messages to Candace dating back 19 months now, not 18. Nicole had missed some. "Can't wait to see your face when you drive it, baby. You deserve everything." The wife doesn't suspect a thing. Too busy at the hospital to notice. "After the gala, we should take it to the coast. Just us. Tell her I have a conference." Each message was a gift. Each one would play beautifully in court. But I needed more. Rachel had been explicit. "We need to prove intent to defraud and systematic deception. The car is good, but if we can show ongoing financial manipulation with clear knowledge that he was breaching fiduciary duty to the marriage, we can go after criminal charges, not just civil." Criminal charges meant more than divorce. It meant fraud charges, possible jail time, definitely the end of Troy's consulting career. I called Nicole. "I need his bank access, everything." "That's legally gray," she warned. "It's a joint account. I'm on it. I just need the passwords." "Give me 48 hours. Meanwhile, Troy was getting bolder. He'd started leaving his phone face up on the counter, messages from Candace lighting up the screen. "Thank you again for last night. The car is perfect. Lunch tomorrow? I'm thinking that Italian place. Can't stop thinking about you." He'd glance at me after each notification, checking if I reacted. I never did. Just kept chopping vegetables or folding laundry, playing the oblivious wife. The night before our accounts froze, Troy dropped the real bomb. "I'm thinking of taking some time off," he announced over dinner. "Maybe a month. Candace and I need to oversee the Miami expansion personally." "A month is a long time," I said carefully. "The firm needs someone on the ground there. It's a big opportunity." He reached across the table, took my hand. The gesture felt rehearsed. "I know it's a lot to ask, but once this pays off, we'll be set. Maybe you can finally open that clinic you're always talking about." The clinic he'd stolen money from. The clinic he'd made impossible by giving my inheritance to his mistress. I squeezed his hand back. "Whatever you think is best." His relief was palpable. "You're amazing, you know that? So understanding." That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay beside Troy, listening to his breathing, and felt something cold settle in my chest. This man, this person I'd built a life with, genuinely believed I was too stupid to see through him. Too tired, too busy, too devoted to question anything. The arrogance was almost impressive. At 3 a.m., my phone buzzed. Nicole. Got what you need. Check your encrypted email. I slipped into the bathroom and opened her message. Bank login credentials, routing numbers, transaction histories going back 3 years, not 18 months. 3 years. The affair had started before I knew. Before Nicole's first report. Troy had been planning this longer than anyone realized. But there was more. A joint account I'd never seen. Opened in both our names without my signature. Forged. Almost certainly. It showed transfers labeled consulting fees and business expenses that actually went to Candace's accounts. Over 3 years, nearly $500,000. He wasn't just cheating. He was money laundering through our marriage, using my name and credit to hide assets. This wasn't betrayal anymore. This was fraud. This was criminal. I forwarded everything to Rachel with a simple message. He's going to jail. Her response came seconds later. Account freeze activated. He'll find out in the morning when cards decline. Buckle up. I returned to bed, sliding under the covers beside the man who'd stolen my past 3 years. Tomorrow, his world would start crumbling. And he'd have no idea I was the earthquake. Troy's card declined at the gas station. I wasn't there to see it, but he called me at the hospital, his voice tight with confusion. My Amex isn't working. Can you check the account? I'm with a patient. I lied. I was actually in the break room, watching Nicole's real-time updates on her laptop. She'd stationed herself near the gas station with a long-range camera. Call the bank? I did. They're saying the account's frozen pending investigation. Did you... Investigation? For what? I injected just enough concern into my voice. Troy, I have to go. Someone's coding. I hung up before he could respond. Nicole's camera caught everything. Troy at the pump, face reddening as he tried 3 different cards. Each one declined. Then his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as he checked his phone, probably trying to log into our banking app and finding himself locked out. He called 4 more times. I ignored each one. By lunchtime, Rachel called. He hired an attorney. Stephen Mitchell, decent lawyer, expensive. They've requested an emergency hearing to unfreeze the accounts. Will they succeed? Not a chance. We have documentation of systematic asset dissipation, forged signatures on that secondary account, and proof he transferred marital funds without consent. The judge will keep everything frozen until the divorce proceedings conclude. How long? Months, maybe longer. In the meantime, Troy has access to nothing except his personal checking, which currently holds about $3,000. I checked that morning. Troy had expected the car payment to come from our joint savings. He'd drained his personal account paying for the gala, the hotel suite he'd booked for after... I'd found that receipt too, and various other celebrations with Candace. $3,000 wouldn't last long. Not with his lifestyle. That evening, I came home to chaos. Troy was in the living room, papers scattered everywhere, phone pressed to his ear. I don't care what it takes, Stephen. This is my money. She can't just... He saw me and stopped. I'll call you back. Everything okay? I asked, setting down my bag. Everything's not okay, Layla. He stood, papers clenched in his fist. The bank froze our accounts, all of them. They're saying there's an investigation. An investigation into what? Financial impropriety. Someone filed a claim? He stopped, studying my face. It was you. I didn't blink. Why would I freeze our own accounts? Because of the car. His laugh was bitter. This is about the car, isn't it? You're jealous. Of your employee getting a gift? Don't play stupid, Layla. It's insulting. He moved closer, and for the first time in our marriage, I saw something dangerous in his eyes. I know what you think, but Candace earned that car. And you freezing our money? That's illegal. That's financial abuse. The projection was almost funny. Troy, I didn't freeze anything. If the bank is investigating, maybe they found something concerning. I kept my voice level, clinical. Are you saying there's something in those accounts that shouldn't be there? His face went pale. What did you do? Nothing. I've been working. I moved past him toward the kitchen. Have you eaten? I'm serious, Layla. His voice cracked. I need access to those funds. The firm has expenses. I have obligations. Like $500,000 cars? Silence fell, heavy, charged. When Troy spoke again, his voice was different, colder. You've been digging. I've been surviving, I corrected, while you've been spending our savings on your girlfriend. The word hung between us. Girlfriend, not colleague, not employee. She's not. He stopped, recalculated. It's not what you think. Really? Because I think you've been having an affair for 3 years. I think you've been using our money, including my inheritance, to fund a lifestyle with Candace Whitmore. I think you forged my signature on a secondary account to hide transfers. And I think that Bugatti you gave her at the gala was purchased with money you stole from our marriage. His expression shifted through denial, anger, and finally landed on something calculated. You can't prove any of that. I pulled out my phone and opened a folder. Photos, bank statements, text messages Nicole had recovered from his cloud backup, emails, receipts. 3 years of evidence, all time-stamped and documented. Actually, I said, I can prove all of it. Troy's hand shot out, grabbing for my phone. I stepped back, and something in my face made him freeze. Touch me, I said quietly. And the cops arrive in 3 minutes. I have Nicole Torres on speed dial, and she's outside right now documenting this conversation through the window. His eyes darted to the living room window. Sure enough, a car was parked across the street, interior light on. You planned this, he breathed. How long? Since I found out you were draining our accounts. Since I realized the man I married was a liar and a thief. I pocketed my phone. The accounts stay frozen, the divorce proceeds, and if you're very lucky, I won't press criminal charges for fraud and identity theft. You're insane. I'm thorough. I pulled a manila envelope from my bag and dropped it on the counter. Divorce papers, sign them, or my attorney files the criminal complaint tomorrow. Your choice. He stared at the envelope like it might explode. I need those accounts unfrozen. The car payment already bounced. The dealership received notice that the check was returned for insufficient funds. They've repossessed the vehicle. His face went white. What? The Bugatti's gone, Troy. Candace got to drive it for exactly 4 days before Premier Auto Collection towed it from her apartment complex. Apparently, they're not fond of fraudulent purchases. You can't. That's not. He was spiraling, trying to process. She'll think I lied to her. You did lie to her. You told her the car was paid for. It wasn't. You used money you didn't have, from accounts you stole from. I moved toward the stairs. I'd suggest you call her and explain, but I have a feeling she's not going to take your calls anymore. Layla! His voice cracked with desperation. We can fix this. We can work it out. I made mistakes, but we're married. We have history. I paused on the stairs, looked back at this man I'd loved. You're right. We have history. And now, we're history. His phone buzzed, then again, and again. Text notifications lighting up the screen on the counter between us. From Candace. He reached for it, and I saw his hand trembling. I didn't need to read the messages to know what they said. Probably similar to the ones filling social media right now. Posts about the Bugatti being towed, speculation about why, questions about Troy's finances. His reputation was unraveling in real time, and I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke to 17 missed calls and a text from Rachel. Call me now. Troy's side of the bed was empty. Sheets cold. He'd left some time after our confrontation, probably to Candace's apartment, though I doubted she'd let him in. I called Rachel from my car on the way to work. What happened? He's fighting back. Her voice was tense. Troy filed a countersuit claiming you committed fraud. Says you froze accounts without authorization and stole marital assets. His lawyer's arguing that the evidence you gathered was obtained illegally and can't be used in court. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Can they make that stick? It's complicated. Some of what Nicole found, the texts recovered from his cloud backup, those might be questionable depending on how she accessed them. If Troy can prove you violated privacy laws, he could get evidence suppressed. Which means what? Which means the financial records stay, but the messages proving intent, the affair details, the conversations with Candace, those might be thrown out. Without them, this looks like a standard divorce with asset disputes, not fraud. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. He walks? Not walks, but gets significantly less destroyed. Rachel paused. There's more. Candace filed a police report claiming harassment. Says you've been stalking her, threatening her online, interfering with her property, meaning the car repossession. That's insane. I've never contacted her. I know, but Troy's smart. He's building a narrative where you're the villain, the jealous wife who can't accept her husband's success and is trying to ruin him out of spite. If he flips this, if he makes you look unstable or vindictive, the judge might look less favorably on your case. I pulled into the hospital parking lot, my mind racing. What do we do? We need something concrete, something he can't deny or spin. The bank records show transfers, but without proof of what those transfers were for, it's just money moving between accounts. We need the car title, I interrupted. If the Bugatti was purchased with marital funds but titled only in Candace's name, that's proof of gift-giving and asset dissipation. Troy can't claim it was a business expense if the title's in her name personally. Can you get it? The dealership should have records. Let me call them. I spent my lunch break in my car on hold with Premier Auto Collection. When I finally reached someone helpful, they confirmed what I'd suspected. The car had been titled to Candace Whitmore. But there was a problem. The sale was technically voided when the check bounced, the sales manager explained. So the title was never filed with the DMV. We have the paperwork, but it's considered incomplete. Can you send me copies anyway? I'm not sure we're authorized. I'm Layla Sullivan. My name is on the account that was used for the down payment. I need those records for legal proceedings. Pause. Let me check with my manager. 20 minutes later, I had PDFs in my email. The purchase agreement listed Candace as sole owner, Troy as co-signer, and our joint savings account as payment source. Perfect proof of asset dissipation. Troy using marital funds to buy property for his girlfriend. But when I sent them to Rachel, her response deflated me. This helps, but it's not enough. His lawyer will argue he intended to purchase the car as a business asset, and Candace was just the designated driver. We need proof of the affair itself, something that shows romantic involvement, not just financial transactions. Without the texts Nicole had pulled from his cloud, texts that might be inadmissible, we had circumstantial evidence, but no smoking gun. That night, Troy came home. I hadn't expected him to, assumed he'd moved out permanently. But he walked in around midnight, carrying a duffel bag and looking exhausted. We need to talk, he said. I was in the living room, reviewing medical charts. Nothing to talk about. Sign the divorce papers. Layla, this has gotten out of control. He sat across from me, and I saw something I hadn't expected. Genuine fear. My firm is threatening to suspend me. The partners got wind of the situation and they're concerned about liability. If I can't resolve this quickly, they'll terminate my contract. Should have thought of that before you stole from me. I didn't steal. His voice rose. That money was ours. I had every right to spend it. On your mistress? She's not. He stopped, ran his hands through his hair. Look, I made mistakes. I got involved with someone I shouldn't have. But this scorched earth approach you're taking, it's destroying both of us. I'm fine. Are you? He leaned forward. Because I heard from the hospital board today. Someone filed a complaint suggesting your judgment might be compromised. They're opening an inquiry. My blood went cold. Who filed? Does it matter? The point is, if we don't stop this, we both lose everything. Our reputations, our careers, our financial security, all of it, gone. He was right. The realization hit like ice water. Troy was willing to burn everything down rather than accept consequences. And in the process, he'd take me with him. "What are you proposing?" I asked carefully. "Settlement. You keep the house and half the remaining assets. I'll sign off on the divorce, no contest. We both walk away and rebuild." "And the fraud charges?" "Dropped. You admit there was no fraud, just marital discord and misunderstandings about finances. So you win. We both win, or we both lose." He pulled out his phone, showed me a legal document. "My attorney already drafted the agreement. Sign it, and this ends tomorrow." I looked at the screen. The terms were almost fair, better than I'd get in a contested divorce that dragged on for years. I'd keep the house, get about $200,000 in assets, and Troy would disappear from my life. But he'd also get away with everything. The affair, the fraud, the public humiliation at the gala. He'd walk away with his career intact, maybe even with Candace still in the picture once the dust settled. "I need to think about it," I said. "You have 24 hours. He stood. "After that, we go to war, and trust me, Layla, you won't like how it ends." After he left, I sat in the dark and finally let myself feel it, the crushing weight of potential defeat, the possibility that Troy might actually win because he was more willing to destroy everything than face justice. I called Rachel. "He's offering a settlement. I saw the draft. It's not terrible. It's letting him get away with it. Sometimes that's how these things end." She sounded tired. "You fought hard, Layla. But if he's willing to drag this through courts, to attack your career, to make you look unstable, judges hate that. They'll split everything down the middle just to make it stop. You might end up with less than what he's offering now. So, I should take it." Long pause. "I can't tell you what to do, but I can tell you that revenge is expensive." "Are you prepared to lose everything just to make sure he loses too?" After we hung up, I sat with that question. Was I? I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table reviewing every piece of evidence, every bank statement, every photograph, looking for something, anything, that Rachel and I had missed. At 4 a.m., I found it. Not in the evidence we'd already gathered, in something we'd dismissed as irrelevant: the gala program. Someone had posted the full event schedule on social media, a glossy booklet listing all attendees, sponsors, and special recognitions. I'd screenshotted it days ago without really reading it. But now, scrolling through, I noticed something in the sponsor section. Special recognition to the Sullivan Family Foundation for their generous contribution to this year's gala. Sullivan Family Foundation. I'd never heard of it. I pulled up South Carolina's corporate registry database and searched. There it was. The Sullivan Family Foundation, registered 18 months ago. Board members listed as Troy Sullivan and Candace Whitmore, a charitable foundation, with both their names on it. I called Nicole at 4:30 a.m., not caring about the hour. "I need you to pull everything on the Sullivan Family Foundation. Financial records, tax filings, grant distributions, everything." "A foundation?" She sounded groggy but intrigued. "That's new. Troy registered it without telling me. Used Sullivan as the name, our marriage name, but I'm not listed anywhere, which means he created a legal entity using our family identity, but excluded me from governance. That's actually brilliant from a fraud perspective. If he funneled money through a foundation, it looks like charitable giving instead of personal expenditure. Harder to prove asset dissipation. Can you get the records? Foundations have to file public 990s with the IRS. Give me 2 hours." At 6:43 a.m., Nicole sent me a PDF that made everything clear. The Sullivan Family Foundation had received $412,000 in charitable contributions over 18 months. Contributor, Troy Sullivan, designated as Family Funds. Distributions, $82,000 to arts education programs, a category that, when I cross-referenced, led to a gallery where Candace served on the board. $55,000 to youth sports initiatives, which funded a tennis club where Candace played. $73,000 to community wellness programs, a medical spa Candace frequented. The foundation was a front. Troy had created a fake charity, funneled our money into it, then distributed that money to organizations that directly benefited Candace. It looked philanthropic on paper, but it was just theft with extra steps. And the gala sponsorship? $30,000 of our money, donated by the foundation to make Troy look generous, while actually funding the event where he gave Candace the car. This was the proof we needed. Not just an affair. Systematic, premeditated fraud, using a false charitable organization. I called Rachel. I found it, the smoking gun. She listened to my explanation, and I could hear the shift in her voice from resigned to energized. This changes everything. Creating a false foundation to hide asset dissipation. That's not just civil fraud, Layla. That's tax fraud. IRS fraud. The kind of thing that triggers federal investigations. Can we use it? Can we use it? She laughed, sharp and delighted. We can bury him with it. This bypasses all the privacy concerns because foundation records are public. He can't claim illegal evidence gathering. And once the IRS gets involved, Troy's not fighting you anymore. He's fighting the federal government. What do I do? Nothing yet. Let me contact a friend at the IRS whistleblower office. If we file a report showing potential tax fraud through false charitable deductions, they'll open an investigation that supersedes our divorce proceedings. Troy's settlement offer becomes irrelevant because he'll be dealing with criminal charges. How long? Days, maybe a week. In the meantime, don't tip him off. Let him think you're considering his settlement. I called Troy at 8 a.m. I'll take the settlement. His relief was palpable. Smart choice. I'll have Steven send over the final documents today. We can sign next week and be done with this. There's one condition, I added. I want the Bugatti situation resolved first. If Candace is still claiming harassment, that needs to be withdrawn. Already done. She dropped the report yesterday. He paused. Layla, I know this wasn't how either of us wanted things to end, but maybe it's for the best. We can both move on. Yeah, I said. Maybe it is. After hanging up, I texted Rachel. He thinks he won. How's the IRS contact going? Filed the report an hour ago. They flagged it for immediate review. Apparently Sullivan Family Foundation has been on their radar for suspicious donation patterns. Someone else already reported irregularities, probably the gala organizers when they couldn't reconcile the donation. So it's happening. It's happening. Troy's going to have federal agents at his door within 72 hours. I went to work that day feeling something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of someone trying to save a marriage. The solid, certain hope of someone who'd found the truth and watched the pieces fall into place. That afternoon, Nicole sent me a message. You need to see this. A video link, security footage from the gala, an angle I hadn't seen before, showing Troy and Candace in a service hallway away from the main ballroom. The timestamp read 30 minutes before the car presentation. In the footage, they kissed. Not a congratulatory peck. A deep, intimate kiss that left no question about their relationship. Then Troy pulled back and said something that made Candace laugh. The camera didn't have audio, but I didn't need it. Where did you get this? I asked Nicole. The hotel's security office. Took some convincing, but when I mentioned potential fraud investigation, they cooperated. This footage proves the affair definitively, and it's time-stamped right before he gave her a $500,000 gift using your money. I forwarded it to Rachel with one word. Exhibit A. Her response. Perfect. We're ready. The next evening, Troy called. Steven wants to meet tomorrow to finalize signatures. Are you available around 2 p.m.? I'll be there, I said, but tomorrow wasn't about signing Troy's settlement. Tomorrow was about watching him realize he'd lost everything. The meeting was scheduled at Stephen Mitchell's office in downtown Charleston, a sleek high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Rachel and I arrived 15 minutes early. Remember, she said as we rode the elevator up. Let him talk first. Let him think this is going according to his plan. We entered the conference room to find Troy already there, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in weeks. Stephen Mitchell sat beside him, mid-50s, expensive suit. The kind of lawyer who defended white-collar criminals and called it Complex financial disputes. Layla. Troy stood, offering a smile that almost looked genuine. Thanks for coming. I know this hasn't been easy. No, I agreed, taking a seat across from him. It hasn't. Stephen slid 2 copies of the settlement agreement across the table. This is the final version we discussed. Ms. Sullivan keeps the house and $200,000 in remaining assets. Mr. Sullivan retains his business interests and company holdings. All fraud allegations are withdrawn. And both parties agree to non-disparagement clauses. Meaning, Troy added, we both move forward quietly. No drama, no public battles. Clean break. I picked up the document, pretending to read it. Rachel beside me stayed silent, as planned. Looks fair, I said finally. Troy's shoulders relaxed. I'm glad you see it that way. And Layla? He leaned forward, his voice dropping into that familiar tone he used when he wanted something. I really do hope we can both find happiness after this. What we had was real once. I don't want us to be enemies. Neither do I said truthfully, because Troy wasn't my enemy. He was just a criminal who happened to be my husband. I reached for a pen. Stephen pushed forward a fancy Mont Blanc, probably worth more than most people's car payments, and that's when the conference room door opened. 2 people entered, a man and a woman, both wearing dark suits and carrying badges. Federal agents. Troy Sullivan? The woman asked. Troy's head snapped up, confusion flickering across his face. Yes? I'm Agent Morrison with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, and this is Agent Chen with the FBI White Collar Crimes Unit. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of tax fraud, charitable fraud, and wire fraud. The color drained from Troy's face. What? There must be some mistake. No mistake. Agent Morrison set a folder on the table. The Sullivan Family Foundation has been under investigation for fraudulent charitable deductions. We have evidence you created a false nonprofit to funnel personal funds while claiming tax exemptions. That's federal tax fraud. Stephen was on his feet. My client doesn't have to answer any questions without... We're not asking questions, Agent Chen interrupted. We're executing an arrest warrant. Troy looked at me, and in his eyes I saw the exact moment he understood. You did this. Actually, I said calmly, you did this. I just filed a whistleblower report with the IRS showing that the Sullivan Family Foundation's charitable donations were actually personal gifts to your girlfriend. Turns out, the IRS doesn't like when people commit tax fraud to hide affairs. You can't prove... We can prove everything. Agent Morrison opened the folder, revealing bank records, foundation filings, distribution reports. $412,000 funneled through a false charity. Every dollar directed to organizations benefiting Candace Whitmore. You claimed tax deductions on all of it. That's $87,000 in fraudulent refunds over 18 months. And the wire fraud, Agent Chen added, comes from the electronic transfers across state lines. You used internet banking to move money from accounts in South Carolina to organizations in South Carolina and Georgia while falsely representing it as charitable giving. That's wire fraud. Stephen was flipping through papers, his face growing paler. Troy, I want my lawyer, Troy said, his voice tight. You have a lawyer, Agent Morrison pointed out. Right there. But I don't think he specializes in criminal defense, does he? Rachel leaned over to me and whispered, the FBI's involvement is bonus. They tagged onto the IRS investigation because of the wire transfers. I'd known about the IRS case. The FBI addition was a gift. Troy was handcuffed. Actual handcuffs, cold metal clicking around his wrists in the same conference room where he'd planned to make me sign away my rights to justice. As the agents led him toward the door, he turned back to me. I'll fight this. I have resources, connections. You think you've won, but... Troy. I stood, meeting his eyes with perfect calm. You created a fake charity. You stole $400,000 from our marriage. You committed tax fraud against the federal government. You're not fighting me anymore. You're fighting agents who have a 93% conviction rate. His face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Yes, I said quietly. It is. They led him out. Stephen Mitchell gathered his papers in silence, not meeting my eyes. The settlement offer, Rachel said pleasantly, I assume is now void? Stephen looked at her, then at me, and I saw a man realizing his client had just become radioactive. I'll need to consult with Mr. Sullivan about next steps. You do that. Rachel stood, collecting our copies of the worthless settlement agreement. We'll be filing our own motions in divorce court tomorrow. Given the criminal charges, I imagine the judge will be very interested in asset forfeiture. We left Stephen standing in his conference room, probably calculating how quickly he could withdraw from Troy's case. In the elevator, Rachel turned to me with a grin. How does it feel? Unreal, I admitted. Is it really happening? Federal agents don't arrest people for show. Troy's going to be arraigned within 48 hours, and his bail is going to be substantial given the flight risk. Those charges carry real prison time. How much? Tax fraud, wire fraud, charitable fraud? He's looking at 3 to 7 years if he pleads out. 10 to 20 if he goes to trial and loses. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Outside, news vans were already gathering. Someone had tipped them off about the arrest. Troy Sullivan, prominent Charleston businessman, taken out of his lawyer's office in handcuffs. Tomorrow, the story would be everywhere. The gala, the car, the fake foundation, all of it exposed. We pushed through the lobby doors into sunlight and I pulled out my phone. One new message from Nicole. Candace Whitmore just deactivated all her social media accounts. The Bugatti posts are gone. She's running. I smiled. Let her run. She'd been an accessory to fraud whether she knew it or not, and the federal investigation would find her eventually. Another text, this one from an unknown number. This is Agent Morrison. We may need your testimony during the criminal proceedings. Someone from our office will contact you this week. Thank you for your cooperation in this matter. Rachel read over my shoulder. You're a federal witness now. Troy can't touch you. We got into her car, and as she pulled away from the building, I watched Troy's legal empire crumbling in the rearview mirror. What now? Rachel asked. Now? I leaned back in my seat, feeling lighter than I had in 3 years. Now I file for divorce, reclaim my assets, and open that pediatric clinic I've been planning. Using what money? Most of your savings are frozen as evidence. The foundation distributions can be recovered. Fraudulent charitable donations can be clawed back, and given Troy's criminal charges, the court will award them to me as restitution. Plus, his business assets will be liquidated to pay legal fees and penalties. I'll get back more than he stole. Rachel whistled. You really did your homework. I'm an ICU nurse, I reminded her. I know how to keep people alive under pressure, and I know how to document everything. She laughed, and for the first time in months, I laughed too. Real laughter, free laughter, the kind that comes from knowing you survived. 6 months later. The pediatric clinic's grand opening drew a crowd I hadn't expected. Local politicians, hospital administrators, families from the neighborhoods we'd serve. Rachel stood beside me, holding a comically oversized pair of scissors for the ribbon cutting. Ready? She asked. I looked at the building, a renovated storefront in North Charleston, painted cheerful yellow with a mural of children playing along one wall. Inside, we had 6 exam rooms, a waiting area designed to feel welcoming instead of sterile, and staff I'd personally hired based on their commitment to underserved communities. All of it paid for with recovered assets from Troy's fraud case. Ready, I said. We cut the ribbon, and applause rippled through the crowd. News cameras recorded it. Local feel-good story. Nurse opens clinic for underprivileged children. None of them mentioned that this clinic existed because my husband had tried to steal my future, and I'd burned his life down to get it back. That part wasn't public knowledge. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago, quietly, while Troy was awaiting trial. The criminal case was still ongoing. His lawyers kept filing motions to suppress evidence, delay proceedings, anything to avoid the inevitable conviction. Last I'd heard, the prosecution was offering a plea deal. 5 years in federal prison in exchange for full restitution and cooperation in identifying other potential tax fraud cases. Troy hadn't taken it yet, still clinging to the fantasy that he could win at trial. He couldn't. The evidence was overwhelming. As for Candace, She'd disappeared. Moved to Atlanta or Miami, depending on which rumor you believed. The IRS had questioned her, but she'd apparently cooperated and claimed ignorance about the foundation's fraudulent nature. They'd decided not to charge her. No evidence she'd knowingly participated in the fraud. I didn't care. She'd lost her job, her reputation, her expensive lifestyle, and her $500,000 car. That was enough. After the ceremony, I gave a short tour to the mayor and some donors, then found Rachel in the break room. "Hell of a day," she said, handing me a bottle of water. "Hell of a 6 months. Any regrets?" I thought about it. About Troy in prison. About the marriage that had imploded. About the 3 years I'd lost to his lies. "No," I said finally. "I did what I had to do." "He's going to spend the next 5 years minimum behind bars." "Good. Maybe he'll use the time to think about what he did." Rachel studied my face. "You're not bitter." "I'm tired," I corrected. "But not bitter. Bitter would mean I was still carrying it. I'm not. I built something from the wreckage." I gestured to the clinic around us. "This place will treat hundreds of kids who wouldn't otherwise have access to care. That's worth more than any revenge." "You got both, though. Revenge and rebuilding." "Maybe." I smiled. "But the rebuilding feels better." My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Miss Sullivan, this is Troy. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I'm asking for 5 minutes of your time. I need to talk to you before the trial starts." I showed Rachel. She raised an eyebrow. "You going to respond?" "Should I?" "That's not a legal question. That's a personal one." I stared at the message, then deleted it. "No, I don't think I will." Troy could say whatever he needed to say to his lawyers, his therapist, or himself. I didn't need to hear it. His apologies wouldn't change what he'd done. His explanations wouldn't return the 3 years he'd stolen. And his regret, if it was even genuine, was his burden to carry, not mine. I'd closed that chapter. The divorce was final. The criminal case was in the prosecution's hands. The clinic was open. My future was mine again. That evening, I drove home to the house. My house now, bought out from the marital estate with recovered funds. I'd redecorated it completely, erasing every trace of Troy's presence. New furniture, new paint, new memories. I poured a glass of wine and stood on the back porch, watching the sun set over Charleston's harbor. The same view I'd seen 1,000 times during my marriage, but somehow it looked different now. Brighter, less burdened. My phone rang. Nicole. "Saw the news about the clinic?" she said. "Looks amazing." "Thanks to your work. You're the one who put it all together." "I just found the evidence." She paused. "Troy's trial starts next month. You ready to testify if they call you?" "I'm ready." "Good, because I have a feeling it's going to be quite a show." His defense is arguing temporary insanity, claims the stress of work made him act irrationally. I almost laughed. He systematically created a fake charity and funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars through it over 18 months. That's not insanity. That's planning. Jury will agree. Stephen Mitchell already withdrew his counsel. He's been replaced by a public defender. Troy's running out of money for legal fees. The irony is perfect, I noted. He stole from me to look rich, and now he can't afford to defend himself against stealing from me. After we hung up, I sat on the porch until the stars came out. Somewhere in the city, Troy was probably in a cell, still trying to figure out how it all went so wrong. Still believing he'd been smart, careful, in control. He'd never understood that the biggest mistake wasn't the affair or the fraud. It was underestimating me. I'd spent 12 years being the supportive wife, the accommodating partner, the one who made sacrifices. He'd assumed that meant I was weak, passive, someone who'd accept betrayal because I'd accepted everything else. But there's a difference between choosing to be kind and being incapable of being ruthless. I'd chosen kindness for 12 years. When Troy forced my hand, I'd simply chosen something else. As I finished my wine, I thought about tomorrow. Morning rounds at the hospital, afternoon appointments at the clinic, evening plans with Rachel and some friends I'd reconnected with. A full life, built from pieces of a broken one. Troy had tried to steal my future. Instead, he'd given me the motivation to build something better than I'd ever imagined. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's surviving, rebuilding, and thriving while your betrayer watches from behind bars. Sometimes it's opening a clinic that carries your name, not his, and knowing that every child treated there is proof that you won. Not because you destroyed him, because you refused to let him destroy you. I raised my empty glass to the night sky in a silent toast, to justice, to survival, to the future I'd reclaimed, and to never again underestimating what I was capable of when pushed too far. The story could have ended darker, with more bitterness, more rage, more need for Troy's suffering. But that wouldn't have been a victory. That would have been letting him continue to define my life, even from prison. This was victory, moving forward without looking back. The pediatric clinic's sign glowed in my mind. The Layla Sullivan Children's Health Center. Not Sullivan Family Foundation. Not a stolen name used for fraud. My name, my dream, my future, built from the ashes of betrayal and stronger for it. That was the real revenge, and it was enough.